Captain Evara Shen's survival instincts had kept her alive through 15 years of security contracting across hostile worlds. Those same instincts were currently screaming at her to evacuate New Haven before the Kreth Dominion's forces overran the city completely. She should have left 2 weeks ago when her team died. Should have evacuated with the government officials who hired her. Should be on a transport heading literally anywhere else instead of trapped in this war-torn city with 2,000 civilians and rapidly dwindling supplies. But there was one problem. Sergeant Michael Torres refused to leave. Evara watched him from across the civilian shelter, a human running New Haven's entire defense coordination with nothing but determination and a comm unit that barely worked. He was organizing medical supply distribution, his voice calm despite the artillery bombardment shaking dust from the ceiling. Humans weren't supposed to be tactical geniuses. Mid-tier species, competent but unremarkable. Yet Torres moved through chaos with unshakable calm that made people listen, trust, follow. Her Arxian ears detected his elevated heart rate. He was terrified like everyone else. But he didn't show it. Just kept working, kept organizing, kept people believing survival was possible. Evara had confronted him this morning, demanding to know why he was throwing his life away on a lost cause. Torres' answer had been devastatingly simple. Because if everyone with the ability to help decides it's not worth the risk, these people die alone and terrified. I can't live with that, so I stay. It wasn't logic, it wasn't tactical. It was human stubbornness wrapped in compassion, and it had cracked something in Evara's carefully controlled worldview. She'd made a decision her entire species would consider irrational. She stayed too. Now, watching Torres coordinate another impossible rescue operation, going out during bombardment to extract civilians from a collapsed building, Evara realized she was learning a new definition of courage. Not Arxian tactical superiority, not defeating enemies through perfect strategy, but human courage, standing ground when all seems lost, not through conquest, but through refusing to abandon people who need you. Torres emerged from the rubble carrying a child, his uniform torn and bloody. He handed the crying kid to a medic, accepted water he probably wouldn't drink himself, and immediately started planning the next rescue. Evara's ears angled forward with something like admiration. This human was either insane or the bravest person she'd ever met, possibly both. "Torres," she called out, "I'm going with you on the next run." He looked surprised. "Your contract's void, you don't have to." "I know, I'm going anyway." Torres studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, partners." "Partners," Evara agreed, though she didn't yet understand that this agreement would change her entire life. Working alongside Torres transformed Evara's understanding of courage. She'd always equated bravery with combat prowess. Arxian culture celebrated warriors defeating enemies against overwhelming odds. But Torres' courage was different. Quieter, more devastating. It was in how he talked down panicked civilians during bombardments, voice calm even when buildings shook. How he shared personal rations with starving families despite his own supplies being critically low. How exhausted determination kept him moving when he should have collapsed hours ago. They developed rhythm. Evara's enhanced threat detection complemented Torres' ability to keep civilians organized. She identified safe routes. He convinced terrified people to trust them. She planned defensive positions. He inspired volunteers to man them. One night, during a brief lull, Evara asked about fear. Her Arxian ears detected his elevated heart rate during rescues. He was terrified. Why keep going when your body screams at you to flee? Torres admitted he was scared constantly. "I'm not some fearless hero. I'm just a guy who decided being afraid is okay as long as it doesn't stop you from doing what's right." Courage isn't absence of fear. It's doing the necessary thing despite fear. The honesty devastated Evara. Arxian culture taught that admitting fear was weakness. Yet Torres treated fear as simply data, acknowledged, processed, overridden by choice rather than eliminated by force. It was the most human thing she'd witnessed. The crisis came when Kreth forces breached New Haven's outer defenses. 12 hours until enemy soldiers reached civilian shelters. Torres organized evacuation to old mining complex with underground bunkers, 3 kilometers through active combat zones. Evara ran tactical calculations. Survival probability, 18%. The rational choice is evacuate who we can and leave the rest, she said. Torres refused. We move everyone or no one. I'm not playing triage with people's lives when there's still a chance. 18% isn't a chance. It's statistical anomaly. You'll get people killed trying to save them. Maybe. But I'd rather die trying to save everyone than live knowing I abandoned people who trusted me. It was infuriating, irrational, the bravest thing Evara had ever heard, her ears flattened with determination. Then we do it together. Because if you're staying, I'm not letting you face impossible odds alone. Torres looked surprised, then smiled, exhausted but genuine. Together, Evara confirmed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The evacuation was chaos. Torres and Evara led groups through rubble-strewn streets while artillery screamed overhead. Evara's enhanced hearing picked up threats seconds before they materialized. Torres' coordinated movement carried children who couldn't keep pace, kept people believing survival was possible. They lost people. Each loss hit Torres visibly, but he didn't stop. Just acknowledged grief and kept moving because stopping meant more deaths. Halfway through, they were pinned by enemy fire. Creth Patrol, established in a building overlooking their route, couldn't advance without casualties, couldn't retreat without abandoning civilians ahead. Torres made a decision that stopped Evara's heart. He'd create distraction, draw fire while she led civilians through. Suicide mission. Evara's survival instincts screamed to accept this tactically optimal solution. Instead, she refused. If you're creating distractions, I'm covering your approach. We both survive or neither does. Evara, you taught me courage is doing what's necessary despite fear. I'm terrified right now, but I'm not letting you die alone. We're partners. We do this together. Torres looked genuinely surprised, then smiled. Together. Their assault was desperate and brilliant. Torres drew fire. Evara circled with Arxian stealth, using enhanced hearing to track enemy positions. She neutralized the patrol while Torres kept them focused. They survived by seconds, by perfect synchronization, by refusing to let each other face death alone. When they regrouped with civilians, both bleeding from minor wounds, Torres put hand on Evara's shoulder. Thank you for not leaving me to do that alone. Evara's ears angled forward, trust, affection, something she didn't have words for yet. You've never abandoned anyone. I couldn't abandon you. They reached the mining complex, sealed themselves in bunkers just as Creth forces overrun the city above. 3 days underground with 2,000 civilians, limited supplies, no outside communication. It should feel like tomb. Instead, somehow, it felt safe. Because Torres was there, steady and calm. Because Evara was there, monitoring threats and planning defenses. Because they were together, and that made the impossible feel survivable. Relief forces arrived on the 3rd day. Coalition neither Creth nor Talvix evacuated New Haven's survivors. 2,000 civilians who shouldn't have survived, but did, because one human refused to leave and one Arxian refused to let him face impossible odds alone. In aftermath, both received medical treatment, psychological evaluation, offers to return to home systems. Torres was heading to Earth for retirement. Evara should return to Arx Prime, but thought of leaving Torres, walking away from the partnership they built under fire, felt wrong. On their last night before transports departed, Evara found Torres on observation deck, staring at Veridian Prime's scarred surface. You saved 2,000 people, she said quietly. We saved them, Torres corrected. I couldn't have done it without you. Evara's ears angled with complicated emotion. I watched you for 3 weeks before deciding to stay. Couldn't understand why you wouldn't evacuate. My people would call you irrational, but you knew something I didn't. Some things matter more than survival probability. What things? Compassion, connection, refusing to abandon people who need you. She moved beside him. You taught me different courage. Not Arxian tactical superiority, but human courage, standing ground when all seems lost, not through conquest but through caring enough to stay. She took breath. I've spent my life chasing tactical advantage, optimal positioning, survival odds. But these weeks with you, fighting beside you, watching you refuse to give up, I felt something I haven't felt in years. What's that? Home, not a place or planet, just the feeling of safety in someone's presence. Evara met his eyes. With you, I feel at home. Torres was quiet then. I came here running from ghosts, people I couldn't save in previous conflicts. Thought maybe if I saved enough here, it would balance scales, but it doesn't work that way. But working with you, having someone who stayed not because they had to, but because they chose to, that gave me something heroics never did. Purpose that wasn't about running from guilt, but building something meaningful with someone who saw me clearly and stayed anyway. He faced her fully. You make me feel like maybe I'm not just broken soldier trying to outrun failures. Like maybe I'm someone worth standing beside. That's the closest to peace I've felt in years. Evara's subtle bioluminescent markings pulsed with emotion. So what do we do? Or, Torres suggested carefully, we don't separate. I'm retiring from official service, but there are dozens of conflict zones needing civilian defense coordination. We could keep doing this. Together, if you want. Partnership proposal. 2 people from different species who found belonging in each other's courage. Evara's ears angled forward decisively. Yes, together. Because you taught me home isn't where you're from, but who stands beside you when everything falls apart. I can't imagine facing another crisis without you there. Being impossibly brave and making me believe survival is worth fighting for. Torres smiled, exhausted, genuine, peaceful. Then I guess we're partners, officially. Partners, Evara agreed. Years later, their civilian defense organization operated across multiple conflict zones, always staying when others evacuated, always believing survival was worth fighting for. They saved thousands, lost hundreds they couldn't save, but faced it together, and that made the impossible survivable. When younger operatives asked what made their partnership work, Evara always answered, "He taught me bravery isn't absence of fear, but choice to do what's necessary despite it. I taught him peace isn't found outrunning ghosts, but standing beside someone who sees all your scars and stays anyway. Together, we're home." And Torres, listening from across the room, always smiled. Because she was right. Home wasn't any planet. Home was the woman whose enhanced hearing still detected his elevated heart rate during dangerous operations, but stayed beside him anyway. Home was partnership built in rubble of war-torn city, choosing each other daily through impossible odds. Home was belonging found not in safety or victory, but in someone's presence when all seems lost, someone refusing to let you face darkness alone. That, they learned on Veridian Prime, is what courage and home both look like. Not conquest or places, but the choice to stand beside someone and make space for their flaws, fears, determination to do right even when analysis says flee. And in that choice, repeated daily across a dozen conflict zones, they built something more enduring than any structure. Home in each other's courage, belonging in shared purpose, peace in knowing that whatever comes next, they'll face it together.